Good morning. Almost didn't make it, man. I was running backstage. I was the same guy in the pool. That's what that was. If you didn't know, North Orange Christian Church has children in the service. We believe in young families. So that's just part of our culture. So if you hear some kids kind of making kid noises, that's okay. We can get through it together. It's good to see you all on this unofficial holiday, by the way. Well done, well done. Let me ask you a question as we start. How important are agreements, promises, deals to you? How important are they? Are they important? A handshake deal, sign on the dotted line, that's a secure deal? Do you believe that's going to happen? Yeah? What about when they come from people in charge? Do you believe that those deals are finalized? What about when they come from those in political office? Do you believe in those deals? I'll tell you a story here. In September 1938, Adolf Hitler signed the Munich Agreement with Britain and France, promising that the Sudetenland would be his last territorial domain in Europe. Europe exhaled. War had been avoided. Leaders believed peace had been secured with a signature and a handshake. But almost immediately, Hitler regretted the restraint. Within months, in 1939, he broke the agreement, invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, and revealed that the promise had only been a pause and not a change of heart. We find ourselves in the Exodus story this morning. The Israelites have just been freed by Pharaoh. It took 10 plagues. It took death and devastation for them to get their freedom, and that's where we'll take up our story today. Exodus chapter 13 is where we are this morning. Exodus in chapter 13. I'll pause and let you get there. Exodus 13 and verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. So this is a newly freed people leaving Egypt. And if you'll remember, they didn't leave empty-handed. They left with provisions, food, and stuff that they would need. They left with silver and gold. And we're told here that they left with some sort of armor. They are equipped for battle. But God said, I'm not going to lead them by the Philistines. Well, if you read on, you'll find out the Philistines are a war tribe, and they're very good at it. And he didn't want the Israelites to be afraid because he was going to lead them to the wilderness. So he said, I'm going to lead them the long way. And though they're equipped for battle, though they're dressed for battle, they're very much not soldiers. Their last occupation was slave. And so they wouldn't do well in the battle. Verse 21, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to guide them light, that they may travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart before the people. So God is present with the people. The Israelites had heard of this God of their forefathers. This God of their forefathers has now freed them. They now have treasure, so to speak, and they're walking in the wilderness. But here's the problem with walking in the Sinai wilderness for days. The temperature can get really hot. It can get up to about 110 or even higher. And so if you're working in the heat, what would you like the most? Besides water, everyone says water. What would you like the most? Shade. And so God provided a cloud to cover the people. Is that good? I'll tell you about a vacation that I took. One of my childhood friends moved to Vegas. Big house, game room. My kids love it, right? And he's got a pool. We went to visit my childhood friend during the summer. It was 116 degrees. It was hot. My kids complained the whole time. I said, get in the pool. We got in the pool. Have you ever swam in minestrone? That's what it felt like. It was swampy. So this is what happened. My kids, seriously, they revolted against me like Israel. I'm Pharaoh. And they said, never again. We're never going to Uncle Jay's house in Vegas again. Okay. The other thing about the Sinai Peninsula is it can get really cold at night. Depending on elevation, there can be a 70-degree drop. So it can get to 40 and sometimes freezing temperature. It's another vacation I took in early October. I went on a one-day camping trip. I left here, went straight into the mountains, right? Brought my wife and my youngest daughter, right? And we set up a tent and we set up a campfire. And as soon as I set up the campfire, the ranger had said to us, hey, you're not allowed to have campfires. And I go, what? He said, yeah, because of all the wildfires, we can't have campfires out here. And I said to him, the only reason I go camping is to play with fire. What are you doing to me? And so we had to endure the cold night. And my kid and my wife in the morning, what did they tell me? Never again. I'm 0 for 2 on vacations with them. What do you need when it's really cold at night and the temperature drops? Fire. And the Lord said, you know what? By day, I'll be the cloud. I'm going to cover you. I'm going to drop the temperature by about 20 degrees as your people walk in the desert. And by night, when it gets cold, guess what I'll be? The fire. And that shows God's first characteristic is that he's always present. In this pillar, he never left them. So they would look and see this pillar of cloud and fire and know God is with us and God is leading us. I want to tell you that he still has that today. But we don't have a pillar of cloud or a pillar of fire. What we have is the Holy Spirit living in the believers. Remember that. Okay, so Exodus 14 now is where we are. They've got this pillar of God leading them. Verse 2, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. And so God has done 2 strategic things now for his people. The first, God's up to something. Throughout your whole life, first of all, God's up to something. The first thing he's done is saying, we're not going to pass by the war tribes of the Philistines. You will see them and you'll be terrified. There's giants in there, right? And they will destroy. The second thing he does is he says, we are going to put you so you're backed up against the Red Sea. And if any army, if the Egyptian army sees you, he's going to say they're lost and they have nowhere to escape. God placed them there specifically. And then comes Pharaoh in verse 5, ending in verse 5. He said this is what Pharaoh says, what is this that we have done? We have let Israel go from serving us. So he made ready his chariot and took with his army with him and took 600 chosen chariots and all other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. What's on Pharaoh's mind right now? Is he trying to bring them back? You don't take 600 chariots and more chariots with officers on them to take things back. You take that many war-hardened officers if you want to what? You want to destroy. You want to kill. Pharaoh has no intention of bringing them back. And here's why. Let's remember, the plagues have devastated the people of Egypt. The slaves that they had are walking away with their livestock and their livelihood, all their silver and gold. And remember what the last plague was? The last plague was the death of their firstborns. Any parents in here? Pharaoh has now come to grips and he is fueled by rage. These people killed my son. And then he looks over the land and says, who else's son was killed in this? And some Egyptian officers go, me, sir, me. And it doesn't take long for him to recruit a bloodthirsty army to say, let's go get them. They want revenge. Verse 9, the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamped by the sea. Pharaoh doesn't run up and just overrun the army. He camps by the water to let them know they're trapped. One of the great things you could do in war is you don't have to start the battle right then and there. You just show up with your army. You set up camp for the night. And you say, hey, have a good sleep. Guess how it's going to go in the morning? We're coming for you. And these Israelites who aren't soldiers, they're dressed for battle, but they aren't soldiers, have to sleep through the night. Israel is doomed. Pharaoh is not trying to take them back as captives. He's trying to bury them in the desert. Chapter 14 and verse 10. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel, I should add, full of fear, lifted up their eyes. The Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. When you're afraid, is it a good thing to cry out to God? It's a great thing. They said to Moses, who was God's representative, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you've taken us away to die in the wilderness? Do you guys understand sarcasm? If you don't, you're going to hate this church. They said, is it because there's no graves you've taken us to die here? What have you done to us bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone, that we might just serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Think about this. Egyptians, they're in their slavery, but they had their own city, Goshen, right? They were worked brutally. They had awful conditions. They had livestock, right? So they say, we had something, and now we're going to die here for nothing. How do you go from celebration to complaining so quickly? The truth is, they didn't believe that God would save them. They did not believe that God was going to save them. They're introduced to this God. They see the miracles, but they didn't believe that he was going to save them, and they didn't believe that God was who he said he was. They believed what they saw in front of them, or behind them in this case, an army marching to take them out. Did they have reason to believe in God? 10 plagues and other miracles, plenty of reasons. They left the land with all the wealth. Yet when danger came close, yet when times got tough, yet when the hour was near, they forgot all about that. It's like they had amnesia for God's work. They thought God was unable or unfaithful, and they longed for slavery. How often do we do that? And Moses said to the people, verse 13, fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord with which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. Verse 14, the Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. If you are an underliner, underline verse 14. God is a fighter. What is your part in that fight? Yes, exactly. The silence that you guys give to me. Yes, that's what you do when you have a fight for God. Shh. I think in the Hebrew, it says, God's got this, just shut up. Okay? That's a loose translation. See, that's the sarcasm. I told you. All you have to do is stop complaining, Moses said. All you have to do is get away. Like, I need to talk to Moses, the manager. I want to go back to slavery. I don't want to die out here. He's like, just stop it. God's got this. Verse 14, 15, the Lord said to Moses, because Moses must have cried out to God, look, we lost him again, God. We had him, we lost him. We had him, we lost him. We lost him again. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Wow. And then he says, how? Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. God says, what's the problem? Does God not know what the problem is? Does God not know what the problem is? Of course he knows what the problem is. What God is saying is it's not a problem for me. So why are you bothering me? And you guys have little ones growing up, or you got them right now, and I'm afraid of monsters under their bed or in the closet or something, right? Right? And they wake you up out of bed, right? And then you go, what's the problem? What's the problem? And you open the closet door, you go, I got this, nothing there. Open it under the bed, nothing there. You say, what's the problem with confidence because you know you got this, correct? You guys don't check you guys are monsters. You're the monsters. And the therapy bills are going up, right? You check. You go, hey, I got this. And God's saying, I got this. Because our perilous problems are light work to a mighty God. What feels impossible to us is easy to God. God is bigger than any charging army. So he says, what's the problem? Why are you crying out to me, Moses? I got this. Verse 17. He's been saying this over and over, but it's important to bring it up again. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they shall go in after them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts, his chariots, and his horsemen, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, that I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. This isn't just an Israel thing. God is the main character of Exodus, and he says, you will know that I am God. For too long, people have forgotten who I am, he says. And now Israel will know, and Egypt will know. Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their left hand and on their right hand and on their left. And so, miracle, the waters part. Have you guys ever been to an aquarium, like a good aquarium? Like a good one, where they have that big wall of like sea life, right? You're just like, this is amazing. That's what they saw as they walked across this. It was an ocean, it was a sea, and they walked across. They saw this on both sides. This wasn't a quick crossing. This was young and old. Remember, Moses said, we're taking everybody. We're taking everybody. This was families and livestock. Scholars argue over how many people there were. Between 50,000 and 2 million. Easy day at Disneyland, right? 2 million, right? So imagine everybody's trying to get to their car at the same time. Old and young. It's going to take forever, step by step through the seabed. It took time. And while the last feet were leaving shore, the sound of chariots behind them are getting closer as Pharaoh was full charging straight after them. Verse 23. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, let us flee before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. Pharaoh's entire forces charge in after them. Horses, chariots, riders, confident that the sea will hold just long enough. But in the early hours of the morning, the Lord looks down from the pillar of fire and cloud, and the hunters suddenly become the hunted. Wheels lock up. Maybe they're clogged up with mud. Maybe they're just supernaturally stopped. Chariots grind to a halt, and the Egyptian army starts to panic. And then they realize the Lord is fighting for Israel. Verse 26, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course. Going down further, and as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. At God's command, Moses stretches out his hand and walks, and the walls of water begin to collapse back into place. Israel walks safely on dry ground while the sea closes over Pharaoh's army, leaving not one behind. And this is why. Because God's power shines in perilous times. Just when they thought it was over, just when they thought there was no way, God said, you will camp, you will be Egypt and the sea. You're trapped, there's no way out. But God found a way through. God shows up when we need him the most. The last hour is God's perfect timing. So here's the question I have. What are you going through right now? What army is chasing you? Is it crippling debt? God, how am I going to get through this? I lost my job. We have these hospital bills. The prescription medication is too expensive. We're going to lose the house. What is the army that's chasing you? Is it family problems? God, this time she's really going to leave. God, this time he's really going to leave. God, my teenage child, my adult child, drug addicted. God, my parents, we haven't talked. What is it? Is it relationship problems? Are you calling out to God because a loved one or yourself has just got a devastating diagnosis? Like the doctors came in with the x-ray and they said, this is not good. And so now you're calling out to God, and you said, God, where are you? God, are you coming? And we just sound just like the Israelite army. When you need him most, that is when God comes through. But that's a promise only for his people. Remember, there was two groups of people in here, right? There was two groups of people in this story. The ones, both of them believed by the end, but only one were his, right? And he only does this. He only comes through for his people. We talked about this last week. God has always wanted a people for himself. That is the characteristic of God. That's why we exist as a church. He did it through Adam and Eve, sin separated. Right? And then he says to Abraham, I'm going to make my people through you. And then they're enslaved and they forget him. And he says, I'm going to get you out because I want my people. And then through the death and sacrifice of Jesus Christ, he secures us as his people. And now we're the people of God. Are you his people? How do you know? How do you know that God's going to come through and split the waters for you? He explains it here in Exodus chapter 13. We're going to go back a chapter. Exodus chapter 13, he gives these things. He says, this is how my people are to act. Number one, God's people must remember all that he has done. God's people must remember all that he has done. 3:13, I'll read it. Remember this day in which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. By the strong hand of the Lord you were brought from this place. You shall tell your son on that day, it's because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Verse 10, you shall therefore keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year. That's a holiday marking remembrance for what God has done. Why did God need us to remember what he's done? Because we're a people with relational amnesia. You know that? In 1986, the singer Janet Jackson, on her album Control, came out with a song, and the name of the song was, What Have You Done For Me Lately? Ooh, yeah. I said I wasn't gonna do it. And who was she speaking for at that moment? Everyone. Because we are a people who asks, what have you done for me lately? We forget all that's been done. We see it happen when someone builds a business with their bare hands, and towards the end of their career, they're pushed out by a board who forgets what they've done. I've seen it happen in churches. Pastors bleed for the church, and then they're pushed out by a congregation over what? Carpet and cubicles? Right. In your relationships, you've fought. Anyone here married over 20 years? 15, 18 of them good, 40 years? Okay, so you are together, and sometimes you can forget all that has been done. And so God says, we must remember. You gotta remember, I'm the mighty God who saved you. Because not only do we have relational amnesia, we have spiritual amnesia. We have spiritual amnesia. We forget all that God has done. And so how can we remember? What can we do to remember what God has done? Well, every week we here travel back to a Passover supper, a night 2,000 years ago, where Jesus took the cup and the bread and he says, remember, like I'm gonna die for sin. Remember. And we take communion every week. This isn't juice and crackers time. It's not goldfish and Kool-Aid time, all right, for preschool before nap. This is a sovereign, solemn, sacred moment where we remember what Jesus has done for us. God says, my people remember. Will you remember? When you remember, you revere. When you remember, you worship. Okay, so that's the first. Am I God's people? Do I remember? Number two, God's people must surrender their lives to him. They will surrender their lives to him. God, in Exodus 13 and 11, talks about, I brought you out, now all of this is mine. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, that's the promised land, you shall set apart to the Lord all that opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are male shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey, and go down, every firstborn of a man among your sons. Verse 14, and when in time come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. And here the end of verse 15. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first opened the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. God says, those are mine. That's mine. And so when you come to faith, you must remember that you're coming to a faith where you are called to die to yourself. Are you God's people? Or do you have God in the same way that you have your Costco membership, right? You put it in your pocket, you show it when you need it. It's like fire insurance in case something happens to you. Are you living by your will or by the will of God? Because God's people dedicate themselves. He asks for them, and they die daily. It happened with Hannah when she gave her son over to the Lord. She didn't say, you can have him sometime. She didn't split custody with God, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and every other Saturday. No! This is your son, God. This is yours. And so are you God's? How do I know? How do I know if I'm God's? How do I know if I'm dedicated? How do you spend your time? How do you spend your time? Your way or God's way? I am so impressed that you're here on Super Bowl Sunday. So impressed, right? Good for you. Do you spend time worshiping? Do you spend time in communion? Do you spend time in small group? Do you spend time doing the things of God? What about your finances? Is it your way or God's way? Are you generous with your finances? Hey, this is going to go to the ends of the earth for the gospel? Or do you go, hey, it's my second jet ski. I got one. I need one that matches, right? What are you spending it on? Your relationships. How do you swipe? I don't know what that means. I've been married 23 years, but I hear that's how dating goes. How do you swipe? Is it God's way or your way? You can't always do things you want to do. Listen, anyone here married over 20 years? We talked about this, right? If you're honest, you will look at your spouse at some point and you'll go like, we're here, we're still together. And the only explanation is because I did it God's way, not my way, right? Because you went through that phase, right, that midlife crisis where you bought a Camaro and you were playing Def Leppard in it and your wife was like, oh my gosh, like, and it's like, how did we stay together? It's like, well, it was definitely God's way, not my way. Because if it was my way, I would have left you. You could have slept in the Camaro, right? Right? Because we do things differently when we live by God, correct? And so are you dedicated to God? Huge indicator if you're God's people or your own people. All right, let's move on. These things all build on each other too. Okay, so we remember and we dedicate, and then this is the third one. God calls his people to a fearless faith. Do you have a fearless faith? Something is going to happen. I know it's going to happen. God is going to come through. I know he's going to come through. Exodus 14, I'm amazed by this. The Lord said to Moses, what are you bothering me with this for? Tell the people of Israel to go. Tell them to go forward. Isn't that amazing to you? God didn't helicopter parent them, right? He's like, well, that's a great question. Well, here's what we're going to, he said, what are you bothering me for? Tell them to go. He expected them to believe that they would make it to the dry ground. God expects you to have radical faith that you will overcome that situation. Do you have it? Here's Jesus talking to his disciples. They failed to help a demon-possessed boy. He said to them in Matthew 17:20, he said to them, it's because of your little faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith like the grain of a mustard seed, like a minuscule seed, you will say to a mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. The believers, the people of God, believe that God will do the impossible. That's what sets us apart. And so this is what we should start doing. When you pray for what you need. Don't pray for dumb stuff and expect him to do the impossible, okay? Because he's not going to do it, right? Because I'm canceling your dumb prayers, right? But if you're praying for real stuff, relationship, health, God, like I need a miracle. You should start ending those prayers by, and God, you know what? I'm thanking you in advance. because I believe you're going to do something, because you're a radical God, and I'm standing on radical faith. I'll tell you this illustration here. It's Super Bowl Sunday. It was a Super Bowl, I don't know how many years ago. You guys know. The Patriots were down 28-3 to the Falcons at halftime. The stadium was buzzing like the game was over. There was one plunky receiver from the Bay Area. They're built different up there. Julian Edelman. He refused to let the moment slip away. He looked around the huddle. He saw slumped shoulders and blank stares, and he broke the tension with a grin and a line that sounded crazy. He said, "Let's go. It's going to be a heck of a story." And every first down felt like stealing time back from the clock. Every completion, a small act of defiance. Down 25 points. Edelman later said he never thought about the final score, only about the next play. He believed that they would win. That's what we're called for. Some of you guys are down. Some of you guys, like, the other side's already celebrating. It's not over. You got to have faith, radical faith, like you're from the Bay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I got more. 14:19 here. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was a cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. How are you going to make it in the wilderness? It's a long journey. How are you going to have radical faith? God showed them that I'm here. Here's the characteristic of God. God's characteristic, that God is a protector. Listen, we wonder how come Egypt never took them over at night, right? It's because God was standing there in the pillar. And he said, if you want them, you have to come through me. That is the God who loves you. That is the God who created you. That's the God who saved you. If you're his people, he says to the enemy, if you want them, you'll have to come through me. God is a protector. And so how are you going to make it? You're up against it. The army of I don't know whatever situation you're in is on it. And you're like, God, there's no way out. But when it feels like that, there's always a way for God. So be part of his people. Remember him. Don't have spiritual amnesia. Dedicate your life to him. Don't do it your own way. And live by the faith that he will make a way. Amen? Let's pray. Living God, I know that there are people here today who need a miracle. This is the wilderness for them. They know they're not alone. Your spirit lives in them. We've got your word to guide us. But they need a miracle. And so, God, I'm asking you to show up. I'm asking you to part the waters. And we, as a church, are thanking you in advance, believing that you will come through with a way that's good and best for these people. God, more than anything, I pray that there are people in the crowd who were just people who online were just people, and are today realizing that they want to be your people. And they would live as your people with your protection and your presence. We thank you, living God, in Jesus' name. Amen.